Thank you. You have to put on your English ears now. Go from English to Hungarian back to English. So, thank you for the introduction. I'm the co-founder of this community of people called the European Organization Design Forum. And the purpose of this group is to explore and create great places to work. And the question is, what does it take when you wake up in the morning to have you excited, energized, looking forward to going to work as though it was a brand new experience? And so I entitled my talk, Unleashing the Magic in Organizations, because as Emma said, it's mostly about the people, right? That's where the energy comes from. I wrote a book 15 years ago where the subtitle was this title, Unleashing the Magic in Organizations. And people, it's the subtitle, because the publisher said nobody would buy a book. Nobody would buy a book with the title, Unleashing the Magic in Organizations. What is this? Right? How could you do this? I spent my early career in new product development. And my job was to create job descriptions and work for people who would make something that, if it were successful, would make a whole factory. If it wasn't, we would say thank you very much. And so it was an incubator for me as a young man to explore this question about what creates great places to work. How do we unleash the energy of people? And I was very young and very naive, and so I had this really radical approach to the designing of the jobs and the writing of the job descriptions. I asked the people. It was a radical idea, right? I interviewed them, we sat and we talked, we brought the equipment into the shop and into the factory, and I talked to them, and they created their workplace. And 20 years later, when I reflected on it, I thought, it's probably as simple as that. Unleashing the magic in organizations is about engaging people and talking to them about what creates something that would have you be energized and excited every day. I thought, I went on a search several years ago for what would unleashing the magic look like. And I give you this quote. I worked periodically with this company, and the leader was asked in an interview on television, what makes your company special? And he said, I don't know how to answer that question. And I'm probably not the right person to ask. Right? Why don't, and I don't know. He went back to the office and he sent an email. And he said, I was asked this question. If you have an idea about what makes us different, please send me an email. This is one of the emails that he got. I'm going to give you 30 seconds by this clock to read it. Right. My favorite line is, I can truly say that I feel like the famed Charlie of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I know that I have found the golden ticket. How many people can wake up in the morning and say that they are so pleased and proud and that they have found their golden ticket? I thought this expresses, and then I read the other emails, and they all said much the same thing. I thought, okay, so it's all about what energizes and mobilizes people. And I created this formula. Then what is it that creates energy in people? I said it's really a function of three things. The first is meaning. Right? Emma used the word purpose. Purpose, right? Meaning. What gives meaning to your work? What makes your work special, purposeful, something that makes a difference? Right? We're not in the business to make a profit. It's helpful because it's one of the sources of energy that helps us renew. Right? but purpose. Waking up in the morning to make a difference in some way, to make a contribution and feel like the contribution I'm making has meaning. And so I'm energized when what I do is meaningful. Second is hope. You know, in our societies today across the world, a lot of people are not hopeful and they're not engaged, right, as a result. You know, I thought, when you're hopeful, you're energized. You're more optimistic, you approach it a little bit differently, you come at it from a different perspective. And hope is usually a function of seeing the results of what you do, right? Knowing that what I'm doing is not only purposeful, but is actually making a difference in some way. That the contribution I'm making adds value, brings value, and I can see it incrementally, step by step, every day. The third is power. Power. When I used this word with a colleague several years ago, she was quite upset. She thought it was too strong a word. She wanted me to change it to influence. I said, but it's not about influence. It's about power, right? The ability to have your voice heard in a way that you know that you're getting their attention. That's power. Right? The ability to speak, to be heard, to know that you've been heard, right? That you can influence your circumstance. This energizes me. And when I put these three things together, right, and I operationalize those in an organization, right? So if I build on our previous speaker, Whole Foods, it's very purpose-driven and purposeful. People who work at Whole Foods, I go there every day to shop. It's 5 minutes from my home, and it's everything that he said, right? And people have a purpose, and it's not about selling groceries. It's about teaching you a different way of eating and health, right? And they have a voice. They can decide what to produce, they can decide what to sell, they can decide the pricing, they can decide their coworkers, they decide everything. Nobody tells them what to do. And every store has this freedom, right? And so the question is, if you want to unleash the magic in the organization, how do you create meaning? How do you bring hope, right? And how do you unleash the power of the voice of people in some way? So I have several cartoons. Hopefully they play as well in Hungarian as they do in English. Right? Right. It's not for everyone, right? And every organization isn't for everyone. We talk about empowered, self-organized, etc. And there are people in the universe for whom that doesn't fit. They wish more structure. They want more direction, right? They don't want to look like a clown. They wouldn't even know how to put on the costume. Others of us love walking around in the little red nose. I was in Vienna last week, and all the children had little red noses because they were collecting for charity, right? Fun. How do you have fun? And so the question is, today, unleashing the magic is not about hiring people. It's about attracting people and inspiring people and onboarding them, right? Not orienting them. He said, I coined the term many years ago, enculturation, right? What does it mean to work here? And what is the kind of place we want to create? But what's the contribution you want to make to it? Not, this is, we're a bunch of clowns and you have to fit in, but how would you want it to look? And what would you want it to look like? And how would it be? And so it's about attraction. It's about onboarding and creating an opportunity for people to create their own experience. That unleashes their energy. Second one. This is mostly what enculturation is about. Enculturation is about teaching you what nobody will tell you is the way things actually work around here, right? This is enculturation. And my point in this slide is as much about part of what minimizes energy is the conflict between the formal and the informal. This dissipates energy. And so we have to align the formal and the informal. When the formal and the informal are aligned, it's much more energized, much more powerful, much more spontaneous. And so my purpose in this slide isn't so much about the unwritten rules, although it's quite helpful to know them, right, if you don't wish to make a boo-boo in the places that you work. But the more important thing is we need to align how people work and operate day to day in an informal way with the way in which the formal is supposed to go. And anymore, I'm an organization designer. I'm more concerned about the informal than the formal, because at the end of the day, it's probably the more powerful, right? And so it's aligning the informal and the formal. You know, when you ask the question, what creates great places to work? I say interesting, meaningful, and fun. I have to say profitable because usually there's an executive in the room and, you know, and if I forget this word, they get upset with me. You know, but the statistics clearly show that if you create places of work that are interesting, meaningful, and fun, you create places of work that are profitable and productive, right? There's tons of research over the last 50 years that demonstrate this. When I first started in this field, there wasn't. There wasn't good statistical, academic research, empirical data that actually shows the relationship between share price, earnings, profit, et cetera, and creating these kinds of places. You know, but the question is, for each of us, what would create a great place for you? Right? The research says when you look at work, people want variety. A little bit of autonomy, some freedom to move, right? Significance. They want work that's meaningful. Teams. They want good teams. They want to work with people who they appreciate and value and who appreciate and value them, right? But the question is, what creates and constitutes great work for you? In my profession, there are a lot of org designers who tell people what it should look like, right? Your list at the end. This is prescriptions, telling people how it should look. You should do Beta Codex. You should do Holacracy. You should do Six Sigma. You should do whatever. And the answer is, what would work for you? Not what's the answer of the moment that would make us looking like we're following the next fad in some way. And so what creates and constitutes great places to work is a dialogue. It's a conversation. It's never the same in any two organizations. And then, of course, the question is, well, how would we engage people, right? I mean, mostly what we're describing in Unleashing the Magic is enabling people to co-create their own workspace. Whether it's the physical space, like somebody's going to talk about here today, or my approach to work, the processes, et cetera, right? And so for me, the two most important questions are, what constitutes a great place to work, and how do we have that conversation? I'm doing a project in India with a company that's 50,000 people, and 50,000 people are talking about, at one moment, at the same time, what creates a great place to work? And what would that look like for us, and how would we want it? And it certainly has many of the words that we throw out all day. Collaboration, cooperation, right? Networks, social systems, voice, et cetera. But then the question was, well, how would we decide this? And the answer is, well, 50,000 of us have to decide it. One person can't decide it. And the CEO, he said, I'm not going to do it. As soon as I say, everybody's going to tell me I'm crazy. Right? And so what creates it, and how do we engage people to co-create it? That's what energizes people. That's what unleashes their energy. Last cartoon. And if you can't get that through your thick skull, right, you can't mandate it. You can't order it. It has to be emergent. Unleashing the energy, energizing people is about the emergence of new ideas and new ways of working, new possibilities. I gave a speech to a bunch of leaders 2 years ago. And I said, one of the things that nobody will tell you you need to do, but I'm going to tell you need to do, is fail. fail. And I said I had 6 things. This was one of the 6. At the end, I asked for questions, 87 questions about fail, no questions about the other 5, right? Because you have to be able to fail. As humans, we learn by failing. This is how it works, right? But we have to be able to fix it quick. What went wrong? How do we appreciate it? Take the Japanese approach, a gem to be mined or to be polished. Right? How do we take it as a gift, not as a curse in some way? How do we approach it in a good kind of way? You can't mandate it, right? Which is part of the dilemma, I think, because people want to mandate engagement and energy, and you can't do that. It comes from the dialogue and the interaction. I'm the inventor of whole-scale change. When I say engage them in a dialogue, I literally mean everybody. I was asked this morning, what's the largest group I ever had in a conversation at one time? And the answer was 2,500 people in one place, all talking about what's the future they want to co-create. In one room, 1,200. In one organization, 50,000. Right, we did a jam for innovation. What are the new and best ideas we can create? And we literally engaged the whole system in this process and in thinking about it. And so if you open your mind to the idea that we could actually engage the whole system in a conversation about what's the future look like? What's the future we want? What's the future that would energize and mobilize me and have me being excited about waking up in the morning and coming to make a contribution, right? And so whether you bring them all in the room, this picture is one of my large group meetings from several years ago, or you do it in a more distributed virtual way. How do you engage in conversation about what this is? And then the last question is about what, right? I mean, what creates a great place? I mean, obviously you have to have great strategy. You need to know where you're going, right? You need to begin with the end in mind. But then you need the right methods and tools. You need the right software and systems. You need the right resources. You need the right configuration and constellation of jobs, work. I don't use the word jobs so much anymore as I do the word work. Work doesn't go away, jobs do, right? And so when you're engaging in the conversation, it can be on any one of these topics. Probably should be on all of them in some way. And so, because the one that you don't talk about is probably the one that you needed to talk about, and the one that will maybe mess things up some. And so the question about what's the right set of conversations is what of these topics are the most important for us to be aligned on and energized about in order to make it work, okay? Direction, methods and tools, roles, work, structures, resources, etc. That's what creates success. Thank you.